100 million population. India is now over 1 billion. Both countries are firmly under globalist control. And they will just play the nations off against each other and will export Chinese authoritarianism worldwide. You know, it just came out yesterday that China is now giving more money to the third world than the IMF every year. And when you hear about the IMF, that means our money. They take our money that we back up with taxpayers, and the private bankers openly go in and say, here's the money, now you got to spend it with this private company. That's on record. That's all been leaked. The BBC's covered it. And it was IMF World Bank loans that started China. And now Americans buying cheap Chinese slave goods have financed what's happened. And like a dealer, and that's what China is, selling us crack, the American people cannot stop buying the Chinese slave goods. They have sold their liberty, their freedom, their future. They've deindustrialized us in the name of the Xbox, in the name of Connect, that face scans you and tracks everything you do in your house and has a microphone and a camera that watches you in your home. And the government admittedly is dialing in to these systems and watching you, and the OnStar. I mean, and selling us that authoritarianism is good. There's this conversion into tyranny happening, and China is there to lead the way. And when they, quote, give countries, you know who mines the majority of the minerals, rare earth minerals now out of Australia? It's not even the British government. It's the Chinese. And the Australians are freaking out. I mean, the Chinese are coming in, taking over almost every mining city, and they're demanding stakes in the, in the domestic minerals themselves and actually taking the country over. And they control over 90% of rare earth minerals that go into all the gadgets as well. They have a strategic plan because they're the collectivist model. And where does David Rockefeller spend a lot of time? Who was involved in creating the system? David Rockefeller, who admittedly set up the modern UN as we know it. That's how powerful these people are. And so they're going to use China to muscle out what's left of Western industry and everything else and force that giant sucking sound, that complete implosion of the economy that will render us subservient and dependent on them. But we must not hate the Chinese people. They are fighting back. They want freedom. You know, our media back in Tiananmen Square halfway praised them. Today they're decried. The Dalai Lama is kicked out the back of the White House. He's called a feudal dictator by the news. And he's certainly not perfect, but compared to the Chinese communists, I mean, they did take over Tibet. They do force Tibetan women to marry Chinese males. And, of course, they're all Asian, but the point is forcing you to marry, ending the culture. The globalists want to end all cultures. Again, they sell the communist Chinese murderers like they're rock stars. And that's what this is about. But it'll also create, at a subconscious level, envy. Americans love thinking they're number one. They're real into that. When America that has been dead a long time, I'm trying to resurrect it. We can do it with your help. So it's having the other effect of people calling for more defense spending and feeling incredibly threatened, which is what the Rothschilds would always do. They'd sell one armament to the Austrians, and then the French had to have the better one. And then the Austrians had to have the better. Then the British had to have, and always one-upping each other. So this is the perfect way to enrage Americans, coming out and saying China owns America and putting Chinese flags up everywhere in Washington. Now, let's go to this clip put out by Citizens Against Government Waste that was banned on History Channel, ABC, Discovery Channel, and dozens of other channels. This is not allowed to air in America because you can't be critical of our new owners, who themselves are owned by the bankers that make them look like paupers. Here's the clip of the Chinese professor. Beijing, China, 2030. Why do great nations fail? He's teaching the commies. The ancient Greeks, the Roman Empire, the British Empire, and the United States of America. They all make the same mistake, turning their backs on the principles that made them great. America tried to spend and tax itself out of a great recession. Enormous so-called stimulus spending, massive changes to health care, government takeovers of private industries, and crushing debt. Of course, we own most of their debt. So now they work for us. And that is actually what is taught in China.
You have to join citizens.
That is actually what is taught in China, and that is what is in their news. Chinese general says ready to nuke U.S. You know, that's sub-launching the missile. And our military is just busy training to take our guns and, you know, fighting Muslim terrorists publicly funded by the CIA. Again, the globalists fund the communists, they fund the Nazis, they fund the Muslim extremists. A lot of them don't even know they're being funded from, you know, upline, downline. This is geopolitical master stratagem. And this is not my opinion. I didn't just figure this out. I read Dr. Henry Kissinger. I read Dr. Brzezinski. I read the stuff Newt Gingrich has put out, who's praising Obama.
Well, I won't back down.
Reducing tensions and building economic ties. And we hope this progress continues because it's in the interests of both sides, the region, and the United States. Indeed, I reaffirmed our commitment to a one China policy based on the 3 U.S.-China communiques and the Taiwan Relations Act. I told President Hu that we appreciated China's role in reducing tensions on the Korean Peninsula.
The Indonesian citizen,
that North Korea must avoid further provocations.
Up there with Hu Jintao, the communist Chinese dictator. He is elected by the Communist Committee, that is a group of dictators. So the appointed frontman of a committee of filthy, rich, corrupt dictators who wallow with the wealthy robber barons of the West to destroy the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And, of course, he bowed to him again yesterday. He bowed to him again a year ago. Obama hasn't ever found anybody that he didn't want to bow down to. And I was watching some of the press conference. It was about how China is committed in helping the U.S. force through the Copenhagen Treaty, really, that China is exempt from. And they build 2 to 3 new reactors a week, new power plants. They're also building a lot of nuclear reactors. And we build 2 power plants a year on average, because that's all the government allows us to have. And now the feds have come into Texas that's supplying power to 5 surrounding states, the biggest power generator in the U.S., and has told us we've got to shut down and then pay more. No judge, no jury. Congress didn't pass this Copenhagen, but what's the head of NASA and others call for? They said China's going to put tariffs on us if we don't accept the carbon tax. And, oh, whatever China says, we better do. This is about groveling to China. It's been armed, it's been positioned, it's been put into place, and it's involved expanding worldwide as the New World Order's main hydra of tyranny, because it is a complete nightmare high-tech tyranny over there, on record. And you notice it's a total embracing of it. Covertly, the bankers that run our country, that set up the UN, have funded and created this monster and backed it up in the oppression of its people. And now there's a total embrace of it. Here are some of the headlines, and we're going to our guest. Meet the new boss. China owns the United States. But again, only through the bankers who sit above them. Continuing, China plants a flag on Constitution Avenue. Never before done. Hundreds of flags all over Pennsylvania Avenue, just flaunting it, so that when his lordship drove in on the red carpet and walked over the red carpet and then drove in, he would see the Capitol turned into a worship fest for authoritarianism. What does this tell you? What does this say here? Our government grovels to tyranny. Well, of course, we're setting a tyranny up here. Our government has exported tyranny and tried to put dictators in and death squads all over the world if the governments didn't serve them. Here's the London Guardian. China on equal footing with U.S. as Hu Jintao visits Washington. The U.S. has been taken over by the banks that got $28 trillion in just the last 2 years that they won't say where it went. But we're told we're owned by China, and they're our boss because they own $1 trillion. China's owned by the very same banking cartel. China's inferiority in hard power has turned Beijing's advantage and sights on its growing soft power abroad. See, the U.S. plays the part of the devil, as I've told you for years, taking over the world, torturing people. The CIA releases the torture, internationally wanting to destroy our name, but then domestically telling us it's good. So that we are now the new Hitler, and when we collapse, the world will rejoice, and then China will rise up with the EU, and that's the planetary regime. Then the U.S. will be rebuilt as a troop-supplying mercenary backwater. That's all been written about, all been planned by the globalist. China logs double-digit growth in the U.S. The U.S. has 2% so-called growth. That's with Cook numbers. That's what slavery does for you. China got stealth tech from Russia, U.S. lawmaker says. Analyst, what is the plan? What's plan B if China dumps its U.S. debt? I mean, what did Hu Jintao say 2 days before coming here? He said the dollar's over. America's over. He knows full well all we've got's the dollar. He knows the decision's been made to devalue it. He knows the decision's been made to make the Chinese currency part of the new world reserve currency 30 years ago by the Trilateral Commission and David Rockefeller. It's all been written about. How did I know exactly what would happen? Because we understand the globalist. And it just continues here with what's happening. We have traitors within our government who can pass laws to shut down our industry to boost the stock in their companies that are overseas, in Mexico, in India, in China, and again, 160-plus other countries. It's very cold-blooded. It allows them to destroy freedom. It allows them to collectivize here as people lose their jobs and now fall onto the social safety net that was just for the poorest, that now is going to be for more than half the public that's on some form of government assistance. You can see where this is going. And the authoritarians are confident because they know having half the public on some type of government paycheck, those people will do and vote for whatever they're told to do by this corrupt system. And that's why we're in deep trouble. They are coming after the free speech. They are coming after the guns. They are coming after your farms and ranches and your homes. And they are going to have unlimited armies of people who couldn't get jobs at McDonald's in uniforms, trained to beat your brains out. So you better take your counties and your cities over. You better get good cops in there and good sheriffs. You better understand they're putting their federalized goons in right now and that we're in a horrible situation. The CIA is now operating in every major U.S. city. All illegal. Face scanning cameras, total surveillance, all illegal. Satellites with infrared biometric IDs. I told people about this 8 years ago and got laughed at when I had the Department of Defense reports. Alexander Haig was making the money off of it. It says Utah City may use blimp as anti-crime spy in the sky. The blimps are already up there. Most of them at over 100,000 feet. On the clearest days, there's like a little silver dot. The news points cameras at it. ABC News in Utah a few years ago and said, is it a flying saucer? And it looked like the Hindenburg with 2 black propellers on it with solar panels on the side with infrared cameras hanging off the bottom. And I know the name of the airship company. I know about the billion-dollar contracts, but people couldn't believe there was a surveillance blimp at 125,000 feet. So they wanted to believe it was aliens instead. Remember when I ranted about that? And then I go on big syndicated shows and they make fun of me and go, what's this about imaginary blimps? Here it is in Reuters, okay? They got Homeland Security blimps over every major city. Alexander Haig got the money. They're scanning you, they're following you, they're license plate reading, okay? There's unlimited money to enslave you. It's a criminal government. They can face scan everything, but they can't stop $500 billion a year of drugs coming in. Now.